Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at what's coming up in today's show. A historical moment for Hillary Clinton as she cements her status as the Democratic presidential nominee. As Peru counts the votes in its presidential election, debate surrounds the fate of jailed former leader Alberto Fujimori. And Louisville, Kentucky becomes the epicenter of a final farewell to the greatest, Muhammad Ali. But first, this week's look at the race to the White House. With a new series of primary victories this week, Hillary Clinton is now poised to make history as the first female nominee for president of the United States. She took to Twitter Tuesday to dedicate her wins to every little girl who dreams big. She wrote, "Yes, you can be anything you want, even president." Clinton now has enough delegates to secure the Democratic nomination, and Julia Seeger gives us a breakdown now on how it all works.
Hillary Clinton has clinched the Democratic nomination, making her the first woman in history to lead a major party. But how exactly did it happen? How does a candidate win their party's nomination? In the United States, candidates must secure at least half of the delegates' votes to become the party's nominee. This year for Democrats, it represents at least 2,383 delegates out of more than 4,700, a threshold Hillary Clinton has reached. How do candidates win their delegates? In the United States, people don't vote for their candidate directly, but for delegates that represents them. They can be students, civil servants, or activists, for example. Candidates are then awarded a number of delegates in each state based on the number of votes they've received there. And once all the states have elected their delegates, it's usually clear who the candidate for the presidency will be. But officially, delegates only vote for their candidate at the national convention. For Democrats, it will be held on July 25th in Philadelphia. Most delegates are so-called pledged delegates. They've promised to vote for a given candidate. But each party reserves a certain number of delegate slots for its high-ranking officials, or so-called superdelegates. This year for Democrats, they represent 15%. They include party leaders and elected officials. What's important is that superdelegates aren't bound to support a given candidate. They tend to follow the popular vote, but can change their minds until the national convention. Bernie Sanders has called for superdelegate rules to be changed. He says the Democratic Party's primary system is rigged and that it was tilted in favor of Hillary Clinton from the start.
Peru is still waiting to find out who will be its next president. The count from the runoff vote Sunday is still dragging on. Economist Pedro Pablo Kuczynski has the smallest of leads over Keiko Fujimori. Now, she's the daughter of imprisoned former strongman Alberto Fujimori, who is currently in jail. Her party already controls Congress, but the jury's still out on whether she'll get the presidential palace as well. Whatever the outcome, ongoing issues of justice and human rights are sure to be the focus of talks for weeks to come. Our reporters in Lima have more.
The long wait for results in Peru's presidential election. Keiko Fujimori could be the next president. In April, her party won an absolute majority in Congress. Her father, Alberto, a former Peruvian president, is in prison for crimes against humanity. But according to this law professor, Congress might soon approve a law to set him free.
Mr. Fujimori can't be granted an amnesty because that's forbidden for cases of human rights violations. But Congress could legislate to allow him to complete his sentence under house arrest. What they want to do is to pass a law to allow elderly people to complete their terms at home or in a place of their choosing.
Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, who's slightly ahead of Keiko Fujimori after a partial count of the votes, wouldn't oppose such a law.
What I've said is that, as president, I would approve a law that would allow Alberto Fujimori to serve his term at home, like other people of his age.
But victims of state terrorism dread the idea of the 77-year-old former president being released before he's put on trial for other alleged crimes. These women say Alberto Fujimori's government forcibly sterilized indigenous women in the 1990s. They want him jailed for it.
The judge has postponed her verdict until after the second round of voting. We firmly believe that the Fujimori camp has put political pressure on this judge to make sure she doesn't deliver her verdict during the election campaign.
Lots of human rights victims have joined the protests against the Fujimori clan. Carmen and Gisela are still looking for their brothers, two university students who were killed in 1992 during the state's war against the Maoist guerrilla group, the Shining Path. They're still waiting for this unmarked grave to be excavated.
The search for bodies and our right to justice depend a lot on who wins, Kuczynski or Fujimori. In the 90s, during the dictatorship, the Fujimori clan did nothing to clarify what happened in this Cantuta massacre or to find the bodies of the victims.
We demand that the search for the disappeared goes on. It's been 23 years, I insist, 23 years that I've been looking for my brother. He is still officially classed as disappeared.
Human rights groups have high hopes for Peru's next president. Whoever it is, he or she will be judged in part on their commitment to end impunity for the crimes of the past.
Next now to Brazil, and over a month has passed since Dilma Rousseff was stripped of her presidential duties and replaced by an interim president. Accused of fiscal irregularities and weakened by the Petrobras corruption scandal, Rousseff is now in limbo as she awaits her impeachment trial. The Brazil Senate still has 5 months to organize that trial, but setting a timetable is proving extremely difficult. And the clock is ticking on another major event just around the corner, the Summer Olympics in Rio. Our France 24 correspondents Nicholas Ransom and John Dillermore report.
Dilma Rousseff may have gone quiet since she was suspended, but her die-hard supporters are as vocal as ever.
We have no right to just be crying in a corner. We've wept enough. Now it's time to fight back and to stand against this coup.
Here in downtown Rio, the sound of samba has been replaced by political rock. Tico Santa Cruz is one of the few artists who's been openly opposed to the impeachment process from the start.
We shouldn't be afraid to wear the color red. We shouldn't be afraid to say that we're on the left. Stop hiding. There's no more room for this. Go on the internet. Let your voice be heard. Tell them what you think of this situation.
A shaky start to the government of acting President Michael Temer has spawned a new movement of artists and performers. Across Brazil, they've occupied dozens of buildings belonging to the Ministry of Culture, including this one in Rio de Janeiro. They're refusing to recognize the new administration and are calling on Temer to step down. Their rallying cry echoing through social media.
It never really stops. Answering messages, contacting people, building a network. Online interest for a movement is incredible. 4 days ago, we'd never have imagined reaching 14,000 likes. We reached over 1.5 million people.
To shed light on what's become an unpredictable situation, we went to speak with Michael Freitas Mohelem. He teaches at one of Brazil's most influential think tanks. He's currently giving a course to magistrates on the influence of activists who rally via social media.
If a decision to remove Rousseff comes a week before the Olympics, the Games could become a major platform for opponents to voice their discontent, and it could strengthen them. If, on the other hand, Dilma is exonerated, the groups that rallied calling for her impeachment could take to the streets again, and it is possible the dates will coincide. If the decision is made at the end of July or in August, that could impact on the Games, and the social climate could deteriorate.
So, with much discontent across Brazil's political divides, some are calling for early elections. a possibility which still can't be ruled out. In the meantime, preparations for the Olympics are in their final stages, but beyond the Games, resolving the political crisis and reviving the battered economy will be a much bigger challenge.
And we'll leave you now in the American town of Louisville, Kentucky, hometown of the greatest, Muhammad Ali. The boxer died last week after a decades-long battle with Parkinson's disease. He was 74. His remarkable career and his civil rights activism made him one of the most indelible figures of the 20th century. This week, Louisville is honoring Ali's life and work with an Islamic prayer service, a funeral parade, and a giant memorial for its most famous native son. We'll leave you with that. We'll see you next time for another edition of Inside the Americas.